I would like to explain कि इसके बारे में सीखना क्यों ज़रूरी है हमारे लिए. Approximately 15 to 20% of the population of Pakistan are Pashto speaking, which comes to about 1 out of 5 people. And after that, disproportionate to their population, पठानों का जो रेशियो है मिलिट्री में, bureaucracy में, business में, that is disproportionate to their population, meaning they punch above their weight. Approximately 1/3 of the Pakistani army are Pashtuns. And if you know enough about Pakistan history, आपने अयूब खान का नाम सुना होगा, याया खान का नाम सुना होगा, Abdul Wahid Kakar, many of the Chief of Army Staff, Air Force chiefs, Navy chiefs, and many other people of the military have been Pashtuns right from the British era. The same follows from the bureaucracy. If you heard the name of Ghulam Ishaq Khan, etc., etc. So, in sports, you can see in cricket, big names like Yunus Khan, Shahid Afridi, Imran Khan, etc., etc. So, they are, in terms of population, they may not be that many, but they have a significant presence in the day-to-day life of the country. So it's interesting and it's fruitful if you understand where they come from, the nature of their language and their history.
The word Pashtun, is it an anglicized version of the original word from the language? Because you hear, the Pushto-speaking people also refer to themselves as Pashtun.
Yes, but we have two main dialects, which I will be explaining later on in the presentation.
It's a matter of dialect.
It's a matter of dialect, that's right. And the anglicized version is the Indian version, that is Pathan. So, Pashtuns, obviously the first question when you ask about anybody's history is where they came from. What's their ethnic origin? Now this is very interesting because there are two main theories, both of which have attracted a lot of attention from historians, especially during the colonial era. The British have written extensively on it. Then Afghanistan got involved in major wars during the 20th century, and currently there's another war there as well. So this has remained a topic of discussion among many internationally. So the first theory that is popular, in popular culture, is the fact that the Pashtuns have come from a lost tribe of Israel. Now, this theory isn't backed up in anthropological studies, but there are many uncanny similarities between Jews in terms of race, not in terms of religion, and Pathans. Many of the tribal names, which are hundreds and hundreds of years old, like Yusuf Zay, and Yusuf Zay is from the word Yusuf, and it predates, probably around, you can find it up to the 11th or 12th century, and even prior to that, I'll be coming to that in a later slide, there are certain Greek historians who passed through the region during the time of Alexander and after Alexander, who noted down some of the names of the tribes whenever they were passing through. So because of those records, we get an idea that some of those tribes existed by those names at that era, which was pre-Islamic. So as far as legends and myths are concerned, this is generally what all Pashtuns believe themselves to be. Similarity in culture, like despite being predominantly Muslim, predominantly all Muslim, and the practice of giving loans on interest is a very Pashtun tradition, and it lasts, and it is one of the contradictions in our culture. And although it is diminished now, but many places in the tribal areas in Afghanistan don't see it as a bad thing. And although that has changed now, but that is a very marked similarity to the Jewish tradition. Secondly, whenever you refer to a sub-tribe in Pashtuns, you write the word Khel. This is another tradition in the Jews. Whenever you mention this to a Jew, he would immediately recognize it. And secondly, parts, disputed parts of Jewish history refer to a migration of Jews towards the province of Khorasan. But all of this is it's not substantiated with linguistic, anthropological, and historical research. So, in my mind, in my opinion, it's still a myth. The more stronger theory of their ethnic origin is Eastern Persian. As you know, the Persian civilization extended right from Turkey to almost parts of Pakistan, and linguistically, culturally, and geography all point towards a commonality between all these Persian peoples in these different places. Secondly, the more isolated you go to a region, the more influence of Persian exists there. When you come out of those isolated regions, you will see elements of Urdu and English and other languages. But if it's the more isolated it is, the more heavily they'll use Persian, although they may not be aware of it. So generally this is the scholarly accepted theory about Pashtuns, that they are Eastern Persian people. And it's interesting because prior to the 1750s in the Safavid Dynasty in Iran, Iran was a majority Sunni country, and Pathans and Persians mingled together for centuries. But when that sectarian divide came, the Pashtuns remained a majority Sunni and the rest of Iran became majority Shia. So that sectarian divide between these two countries had consequences, and because of that, Pashtuns tend to detach themselves from their Persian ethnic origin. Now, these are the myths, and some are the some of the scholarly analysis. But Afghanistan has always been, the land of the Pashtuns, which include the areas in Pakistan now, has always been a gateway. Many, invaders came through this area, and some actually went from India during like the Hindu Shahi eras of Ashoka and Chandragupta Maurya. They went from south to north. So being a confluence and a gateway, there has always been a mixing of races. There is no pure ethnicity of this region, just like in the rest of the subcontinent. But two main characteristics exist. One is the Pashtun, and one is the Turkic and Central Asian influence. Like if you have heard the word Khilji, the word Khilji is an Indian derivative of the word Ghiljai. Ghiljai is now the second biggest Pashtun tribe in Afghanistan, which shows that over the eras, if people settled there, intermarried, then they were absorbed into the general Pashtun population. Although many historians in Pakistan believe that the Khiljis are exclusively Turks, but in Afghanistan and Pashtun areas, they are considered as a Pashtun tribe.
Present day Afghanistan
Yeah.
was not necessarily always the same Pashtun area, right? I mean,
Oh yes, you're right. You're right.
Afghanistan were part of the Persian Empire.
That's right. I'm coming to the next slide, that how modern Afghanistan was formed. Actually, Pashtun as an independent state and region never existed before the 18th century, before the era of Ahmad Shah Durrani. I'll show you that in the coming slides. They were part of the Persian civilization and the Central Asian and Turkic influence. They are, for all practical purposes, they were a part of Central Asia. So the oldest recorded history, which in the time of Herodotus came right out during the time of Alexander and afterwards, there are certain provinces in Afghanistan that are right beside Pakistan. They are called Paktian and Paktika. Now Paktika is correlated with the word Pashtun. So in the time of Herodotus, these names existed. Then in the first century, another Greek historian was passing through, and he passed through what we call today is the Khyber Agency, the Khyber Pass. So when he passed through the Khyber Pass, he came across a tribe called the Apratai. Apratai correlates to the current word Afridi. Now if you go colloquially, if you go to KPK, they won't use the word Afridi so much, they'll use the word the Apridai. So Apridai and Apratai are very similar. So this is like not coincidence. This means that these people were there at this time. Then there's another word, Shatagadai. Shatagadai is the old name of the Khattak tribe, which we call Khattak these days. So at that time, this also existed. Now, in the genealogy of the Pathans, the Apratai Shatagadai come from a genealogical line that indicates that is like pre-Islamic and is separate from the other genealogical lines. Usually we assume that there are two genealogical lines. One is pre-Islamic, maybe even non-Jewish or Aryan, and one is Jewish, which comes from the tribes which you call the Yusufzai and Momand. So actually, this is a current theory that both these genealogical lines have combined. So when you go to a Pathan area, if you go to one tribe, you will find in the same family one DNA streak which उनका थोड़ा सा गंधमी रंग होता है, and then उनके बाकी cousins होंगे उसी tribe में, उसी family में, they are completely pale, fair-haired, blue-eyed. So wherever you go among the Pathans, this contrast exists in not only in each tribe or sub-tribe, but within families. I can give the example of my own family that some of my cousins look like Scots, some of them look like me, and some of them are a little bit darker, indicating that there is a mixture of a number of DNA strains, and they make themselves apparent from one generation to the other. So I'll jump forward. Remember that the Persian area, Central Asia, in pre-Islamic era, there was the main civilizations of this region were Greek and Persian and the Hindu regions of the subcontinent. When the Islamic era started, the Arabs were inserted into this equation. But prior to that, I think that is general history. Everybody knows that, so I don't need to clarify further. That's not fully clear, because these regions were, where there were the Hindu kingdoms, but at that time, in terms of their population, they were very few. So there is a province in Afghanistan called Ghor. Ghor is a Persianized word of Pashto called Ghar. Ghar means mountain. So even there you heard the word Shabuddin Ghori. So the Pathan origin is, there is a theory that their pre-Islamic or Aryan or Bani Israel origins lie in that province. From there they started spreading the population. Sorry? More evidence shows towards the fact that they were Zoroastrian. Yeah, Zoroastrian, like I give you an example. Yeah. Yes, there were no, I'll come to how Pathans came to Swat, how they came to Swat, how they came to this region. That is another, I'll show that later. Because all this region was not inhabited by Pathans. They were not here. They were invaders that came from the west. This was exclusively part of Gandhara civilization, a Hindu region. And Pathans, maybe they merged and some intermingling occurred, but they are not, Pathans were not here. Yeah. So if you want to bring that into the discussion, I can show you in the Ghaznavid period how that happened. So Ghaznavid period is important for us as Pakistanis because more or less the conversion of the native people of the subcontinent occurred during his era. In the time of Ghaznavi, Mahmud Ghaznavi, Data Sahib came to Lahore, and many other of the Sufya Karam spread throughout India. Now Ghaznavi, Mahmud Ghaznavi, his father was Turk, but his mother was a Pashtun from that heartland that adjoins Pakistan. So Mahmud Ghaznavi had a huge influence, a huge number of Pathans in his armies, in his administration. Like if you look at the name of Data Sahib came from Hujwer, which is placed right beside Ghazni. Now Ghazni is right to the southeastern part of Afghanistan, and as long as recorded history is, it has been exclusively a Pathan area, Pashtun area, inhabited by different tribes throughout the era. So I can just use this whole region to describe where each religious personages came from, all around this core area, which you can see I'm drawing with my hand here. This is the north. This is more basically Turk, Uzbek, Tajik, which is a mixture of Turkic and Persian people. The eastern Afghanistan adjoining Iran, they're basically Persian. Now the mid and the southeastern parts of Afghanistan are exclusively Pashtun. So during the time of Mahmud Ghaznavi, this spread started occurring. And after it ended, the Ghaznavid ended, the Ghori dynasty concluded. Now Shahabuddin Ghori is from the Suri tribe, which you've heard from the word Sher Shah Suri. But he had no sons, and when he died, his Turkish slaves in the form of Iltutmish and his first slave, forgot his name, Qutbuddin Aibak. They took over. Whenever he attacked and then he went back, he left all his Indian regions while he was alive to Qutbuddin Aibak. Now you know the history of Qutbuddin Aibak. I think you are aware that he was, at that time, he was controlling all this region, which I'm showing the map right now. And whenever Shahabuddin Ghori died, this region was left over to Qutbuddin Aibak. And then the Iltutmish and all the other ones followed after that. So, contrary to common knowledge, Pathans have not just remained in KPK or Afghanistan, they have ruled regions going from Iran, Central Asia, right through the north of India, and for hundreds of years. This is a fact that's not highlighted much in the history that we read here. So, although modern era has changed, but when you go to India, these things are highlighted a lot, like the Qutub Minar you visit there, or the Lodi Gardens you visit in Delhi, and different places. The Khilji dynasty came later. I'm making a jump here of about 70 years. The Alauddin Khilji, you read any history book in Pakistan, they will describe him as a Turk. But when you read any history other than written here, he's described as a Pashtun. Now, currently in Afghanistan, if you see this region here, it's inhabited by the Ghiljai tribe. Now, the Ghiljai tribe, Khilji is an Indianized version of Ghiljai. That's Ghilzai. If you look at the president of Afghanistan, Najibullah, during the 80s and 90s, who was, killed by the Taliban in 2000, he was a Ghiljai. So Ghiljai have a very prominent role in Afghanistan. So this era continued for about 40, 50 years.
And in current Pakistan, the Ghiljai are predominantly in the Waziristan area, right?
No, the Ghiljai region, the Ghiljai people are, if you go east of Peshawar into Afghanistan, Jalalabad, between Jalalabad and Kabul. East of Waziristan, you will find other tribes like adjoining Wazir, Ghurbaz, a couple of other tribes, I've forgotten their names. But mostly they are, towards the east of Kabul. So again, another dynasty is the Lodi dynasty. During these eras, if they did not make their own dynasties or empires, Pathans were mercenaries in a lot of the other forces of the Turks and the Mughals. So there's a very famous couplet by Sher Shah Suri, which means that, why don't you, if you are, on account of your valor and account of your sword, if other empires are being created, why don't you make your own? So, which he did himself, which he did by defeating the Mughals in different battles. So, if not rulers themselves, they have been mercenaries. And this has a lot to do with the geography of where the Pashtun lives. Basically, they don't have much agriculture on which to sustain their population or the rate of the increase of population. So just like in Europe, where the Brits came from almost a barren island with very little to produce before the industrial era, so people like these, they always look outwards. But if you come across a region which is rich, they always look inwards and think in terms of defense rather than expansion. So the Pashtuns always looked in terms of expansion because their own geography, their own agriculture couldn't sustain them for a long period of time. So this is a Lodi dynasty. It lasted till 1526. So contrary to popular opinion, when Babur came, he did not free the capture India for the sake of Muslims or for the sake of Islam or to defeat the Hindus. He defeated Ibrahim Lodi in Panipat in 1526 when India was already under the occupation of a Muslim dynasty. So there are remnants of the Lodi dynasty. I just went to Delhi and Mumbai. There's a very beautiful park in the center of Delhi, and most of their mausoleums and their graves are in that park, and it's called Lodi Gardens. So I'm jumping to the modern era. If you have any questions in between, please. Mughals, they came north of Afghanistan from a place called Farghana. Farghana is now in modern Uzbekistan. And Babur claimed his mother's side, descendant from Tamerlane and Genghis, and his father's side is Turk. But for all practical purposes, he wanted to use the name of Tamerlane because he used it as a sanction with which to occupy India. Because during the time of Tamerlane, he came and defeated one Turkish king in Delhi and gave the kingship to another person. So Babur used that name as a sanction, you know, that Tamerlane came. Yes.
Themselves, they were descendants of Timur.
From both sides, not.
No, from the father's side.
That is a claim in Mughal history, but it's not true. He was, for all practical purposes, a Turk of Central Asia.
Probably.
But that is one of the tendencies of that era.
Because Timurid period is not undocumented.
Yes,
It was one
yes,
of the highest
yes,
points of
yes.
Islamic civilization.
Like I give you an example of the Safavid Dynasty. Yeah. Like the Safavid Dynasty, jo unke heads the, they were Kurds. All scholarships say they were Kurds. But when they came to power, they had to claim some kind of lineage for legitimacy. So they became Sayyids. So this is a tendency in different eras. You know, people do that.
You said this is not some mythological.
Yeah.
It's well documented.
Oh yes, it is. Yeah. That's why the claim has been made that they were not, you know, descendants of Genghis Khan, like calling themselves. Huh? Yeah, yes, yes. They used the Timurid line in order to claim legitimacy from the Mongols.
Because they wanted to capture Samarkand.
Yeah.
Babur was motivated
Yeah.
to capture Samarkand because
Yeah.
it was his ancestor.
Yeah, and the issue of Babur, that Babur was excluded from Central Asia when he was totally defeated, and he was lying in Kabul, and he was like had very little left. Then he started to turn towards India.
Because they would have also come to India.
Yeah. Well, actually, the riches of India, he wanted to come for the riches of India. Timur came, raided, went back. So in the modern era, I'm going to jump ahead because this region was for most Mughal till the modern period, and that is the Durrani Empire established by Ahmad Shah Durrani. Now, Durranis came when approximately the beginning of the 18th century, the Safavid Dynasty was ruling most of the region, including Afghanistan. Afghanistan was referred to them as Khorasan. And the Pashtuns rose up against the Safavid rulers, but that too by a Ghiljai chief near Kabul. And they defeated the Safavid dynasty and occupied Iran for around about 15 years, 20 years. During that time, the Ottomans also invaded Iran, and they again defeated the Ottomans in central Iran, which is one of the very few defeats of the Ottomans in this region, probably the only one. So they remained in power. Then Nader Shah Durrani came, who was not a Pashtun, he was a resident of Iran, a Turkmen, and re-established, you know, the control of Iran from the Pashtun ruler. But he used a tribe that was a rival to the Ghiljai tribe. Now remember, only the Ghiljai tribe occupied Iran, not the whole. All the tribes did not unite to occupy Iran. The Durrani, the Abdali tribe in southern Afghanistan, allied with Nader Shah Durrani, invaded India. And if you remember, in the time, I think Shah Alam II or first, in Delhi. He occupied and destroyed Delhi and took many of the riches of the Mughal dynasty back with him, including what they call in the time of Shah Jahan, the peacock throne, Kohinoor diamond, and that was, you can say, the beginning of the end of the Mughal Empire. It broke its back. But later on, Nadir Shah was assassinated, and Ahmad Shah Abdali of the Abdali tribe separated, and they were the leading part of that army. And he kept on attacking India, and he created his own empire, which comprises most of what you see now as Pakistan, Afghanistan, some parts of Tajikistan, some parts of Iran. Now, lasting till 1823. 1823 is the period when the Sikhs came and took the region of what today is Pakistani Punjab and certain parts of Sindh. So all this mixture, you can see a huge movement of Pashtuns and armies and empires. So what has happened over time is that much of the stock of Pashtuns in Afghanistan and KPK, they spread from there. So throughout India, if you go to India, you will come across, even in Pakistan, you will come across many people who can trace back their lineage to these empires and to these eras, because they settled, they got jagirs, they created local, small principality states. So like if let's take an example of a famous person in India called like Saif Ali Khan, the actor. That's his name, not Saif Ali Khan. His father is Mansur Ali Pataudi. Pataudi was a Pathan, dynasty, and he traces his origins back to Kandahar. So the whole of India, the whole of Pakistan, the Khakwanis in Multan, the Kasuris, the Niyazis in Miawali, and throughout, even in Jhelum you will find them. In Multan there are a large number of them. These are all those migrated Pashtuns. Most of them have forgotten Pashto, but they've maintained their history. India is the same.
Especially later Mughal, because when it was divided into principalities,
Yeah.
most of the Pathan generals
Yeah.
broke away, and they had their Pathan, more
Yes.
like Kapurthala,
Yeah.
Kanpur, Bareilly.
Yes,
all
that's
the
right.
Pathan
That's
states.
right. Those areas you refer to are either in or adjoining a place in north of Delhi called Rohilkhand. Rohilkhand was, you've heard the name in history in Hafiz Rahmat Ali.
I'm from
Acha, you're from there, you're Rohila. So Rohilas are Yusufzai Pathans who migrated there, and I just recently saw a book written by an Indian who's a Rohila Indian, and it's a book of history and poetry on Pashto. She's written it in Pashto herself. So Rohilkhand has a very, prominent
later
history. Yes, that's right. So these.
What about the Caucasus?
Yeah, that's right. You've taken another name, Kakezai, and there's another one in Lahore, I forgot, Kakezai and Sadozai. So Sadozai is, Kakezai is also a Pathan tribe, and basically they were traders in Lahore, and they were famous for their trading in horses. And many of the places inside Lahore, which were stables of the horses that were sold in Lahore, belonged to Kakezais. They also have a prominent history in Lahore, I think, yeah. And Sadozais are a sub-tribe of the Durrani tribe, and they were brought, most of them came because in the 19th century, one of the challengers and kings of Afghanistan, Shah Shuja we call him, he was a Sadozai, grandson of Ahmad Shah Abdali, and the British gave him many places in West Punjab and in East Punjab to live and to prosper. And so the Sadozais, in Diya Khan there are a lot of Sadozais, in Lahore there are Sadozais. So you may come across many people. Acha, you are thinking? Acha. Yeah. That's right. So ये आप इंडिया जाएंगे. I just recently went to India. तो इंडिया में भी यही जो है ना डिस्कशन होती है. कोई मेरे पास आ जाता था, अच्छा आप जानते हैं, अच्छा मैं तो फलाना हूँ, मैं कौन हूँ, तो मैं कहाँ से आया हूँ, तो I used to tell them कि जी आप इस जगह से आए हुए. So they were very happy to hear that. So there is a volume in the Cambridge History of India. It's about 6-volume set. There is one volume called the Turk and Afghan. जो अंग्रेजों ने research किया हुआ है, so they have traced each and every Pashtun locality within India. Yes. Now the same history also exists for the people who came from Iran and Central Asia. So if you meet, for example, a Sayyid in India, their history is relatively much more well documented. They will tell you exactly when and from which city they came. उसका परदादा और दादा कौन था, तो वो अपने lineage को वो बड़े अच्छे तरीके से trace कर सकते हैं. But this movement, occurred over centuries, not recently. ये तो I'm talking about the whole history of this whole region. So I'll focus just on Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Fata. Now in 1823, when the grandson of Ahmad Shah Abdali was ruling here, like if you heard the word Hassan Abdal. So when the Afghans and the Sikhs didn't get along with each other very well, to put it mildly, but when they came, Taimur Abdal, Hassan Abdal were the sons and grandson of Ahmad Shah Abdali, ruled after him, and he did a couple of expeditions. Now in order to punish the Sikhs, he renamed their holy site, which is near Taxla, and now till this date it's still called as Hassan Abdal. Panjasar. He renamed it Hassan Abdal. And the Sikhs, and the Afghans, and many of this is also a part of the history of the interaction between Punjab and Pashtun, is that many of these raids in the 18th century created a lot of ill feeling and bad blood between the people now in modern Afghanistan and Punjab, because there were many raids. So Bulle Shah ke mere khayal mein ek misra hai कि जो भी तुम्हारे हाथ में है, this is yours, इसके सिवा तो सारा अहमद शाह का है. So meaning at that era, they did such heavy taxation and so many raids that it actually impoverished some parts of Punjab, particularly the Sikhs. So you go into the interior of Punjab and East Punjab, you will find many people referring to Ahmad Shah as Lutera Badshah. But for the Indian Muslim, like where you come from, your ancestors came from, he's seen as a hero, because when he was in power, he defeated the Marhatas. And for that, he delayed the Hindu domination of the subcontinent for quite a couple of decades. Actually, that vacuum was filled, that's another interesting discussion, but that vacuum was later filled up by the British. So there's a very famous letter written by Robert Clive, who was the British ruler in Bengal at that time. That jab Ahmad Shah Abdali came and defeated the Marhatas, he wrote back to the East India Company, please pray that he doesn't come towards Bengal, because if he comes, we cannot, defeat him. He'll kick us out. But us waqt Ahmad Shah never needed to do that. So after between 1823 and 1849 was the Sikh era, and Sikh were in KPK, but one characteristic of their rule is that they couldn't tax people. They just remained confined to forts. So that 20 years or so, they were in occupation of KPK. And the British defeated the Sikhs in 1849. So Punjab at that time was KPK plus Punjab. That was called Punjab. KPK, a frontier province, was created in 1901. And there's a particular law we call the Frontier Crimes Regulation, which is now in FATA. KPK also had the FCR there as well. I think it was removed in the 1930s. So KPK Punjab was one. 1901 it was separated. Then KPK, prior to the Sikh era, Peshawar was the winter capital of the Afghans. So the whole of the government machinery in Kabul used to come to Peshawar. Obviously, when the Sikhs came, then that had to finish. Then the Afghans tried to take it back whenever the Sikh Empire collapsed, but the British didn't allow it, and it was incorporated into the British Empire. Later on in 1893, after the Second Anglo-Afghan War, the Fata region you know today was exclusively part of Afghanistan. So when they fought, a part of the treaty was that this region would remain a buffer zone, and the people were independent, but it was under the suzerainty of the British. So ये 100 साल agreement था. So it expired in 1993. That is why Afghanistan makes this claim upon Pakistan that this region is, disputed, like Kashmir. So FATA was created in 1893. NWFP, former name of KPK, was 1901. And in post-1947, both these regions, are part of Pakistan. Now, KPK is just like any other province. The FATA is a little unique because its constitutional status is still a little bit, vague. It has not yet been completely determined. So I won't go into the politics of that. That's, very detailed. So it remained unstable till the early 1970s. The one-unit plan in which we, countered the numerical majority of the Bengalis, that remained a big, point of contention, Sindh and KPK, because they had no provincial autonomy. But things remain as the same, but whatever you see in KPK and FATA currently, that is based upon the impact of the 1979 war. There's a huge, massive impact on Pakistan as a whole, but on FATA, KPK is disastrous. Post-2001, there was one disaster on top of another disaster. But despite all that, you can see that that region still is politically, conscious, it's politically aware, and it's part of the mainstream politics of Pakistan. It's like an integral role to play, etc. These are the statistics. These are 1998 statistics. So approximately, how much is that? 17 plus 19 years have passed. We haven't had an agency since a census since then. So this approximately comes to around about, at that time it was 30 million, the population of KPK and FATA. But remember, there are a lot of non-Pashtuns living in these regions. So you have to detract a couple of million. So approximately they must be around 40 million by now. Since the medieval era, even prior to that, we didn't have written constitutions. We had religion, but we didn't have written constitutions. We had laws, but the society gelled and bonded among each other according to certain principles. It's like this in every society. Some have them stated, some of them don't state them. But Pashtun Wali means the way or the life of a Pashtun. Again, coming to Kazmi Saab's question, Khe is a Pashtun, or the word Khe instead of Sheen is used in the north areas of KPK and Afghanistan. South of, you can say Peshawar, and south of Afghanistan use the word Sheen. So when you meet a Pathan from north, he will say, I'm a Pashtun. And instead of saying Shah, like good, Shah means good, he will use the word Kha. But people from both regions understand each other's dialect, but this is a major difference, and there are many other differences as well. But this is a major difference, and this difference is also reflected in the politics as well. So these are but the main literary dialect is the one with the Khe version. The Sheen version is not the main literary dialect. So these are different principles. There are a few more, but these are the main ones. Now another thing is in the religion of the era, this is very, very heavily, influenced by Tasawwuf. The whole region, the spirit and the ethos of the region is, totally absorbed in the principles of Tasawwuf. But people may or may not be aware of it. And Pashtun Wali reflects those principles. So like you look at the word Melmastya. Melmastya means to honor your servant, honor your guest. So again, a principle in Islam and Sufism, etc. But this takes it to another level. For example, if somebody comes and takes refuge, it's like a foregone conclusion that you cannot give him back. If somebody comes to harm him in any way, yeah, that it's like there's no question about it. It's like a foregone conclusion, and all your property, your wealth, your life will be sacrificed. And that's something that the Arabs used in the form of Osama. Osama knew this culture, and they used it very ruthlessly. Nanawate means brother. Nanawate means compromise. Compromise. For example, is another characteristic that if there are two, you won't find this, for example, in the Punjabis or Sindhis or Balochis. They have their own traditions. Nanawate means that if you're in a conflict with someone and the person comes in complete submission and humility, then you are bound to forgive him. So this tradition is very strictly followed. Once a person is forgiven, even if they have killed among each other, they act like brothers. This is something that's beyond my comprehension, either because I'm a witness to it. I've seen people who have killed like a brother of another, and I've seen them meet as if there is no bad blood at all. And I could not understand how it's possible. Lekin it happens. Badal means revenge, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Nang means bravery. So it's expected of a man and a woman that you should display, courage when confronted with adversity. Namus means the honor of one's women, that no matter what circumstances, you honor the sanctity of your own women and of others. Now that's very interesting, of others. I'll give you an example of Sher-Shah Suri. When Humayun was defeated, his family was given safe passage to Iran. Humayun had to run away. His women folk, his children, including Akbar, were taken under safe passage whenever they were found. So even till this day, if two people are in conflict, it's not a common thing, but people outside like to think Pathans are always fighting. Like, it's not a common thing, but when two people are in conflict, the women of the house and the children of the house can roam freely. Nobody says anything. The men, if they come across each other, they may not. They are legitimate targets. But women and children are not legitimate targets. That is why when you see like the modern phenomenon of Taliban, we always consider it as anti-Pashtun. They want to crush all the values and principles by which the Pashtun live by. And this is one of them, that their disrespect, towards schools, towards mosques, towards women. Tura means the sword. Sword, the literal meaning means sword. And it means the retention of the ability to fight, to defend yourself. So when you are suppressed, when you're put down, it is your duty to take up the sword. Khegara means help in the form of the poor or particularly a friend. When a friend asks for help, you must help. Iman means faith. Faith, obviously faith in Islam. So these are the principles, but if you can see that these are qualities and these are disadvantages at the same time, because if somebody comes, like I give you an example of, you took an example of Osama bin Laden. There was a very famous politician in KPK. Uske baad ek case hua, uske upar case se to farigh ho gaya. He was caught drug smuggling in an airport. Bahut zyada. Amanullah Kundi, I remember, 90s mein tha. And he was a minister, former minister. He was caught with a huge amount of heroin in his bag. And that area is adjoining Waziristan. So he came to South Waziristan claiming, Nanawate and Milmastia, these principles that since I have come and sought refuge, so you have to give me refuge. So the whole government, us waqt tha government uska, wo jo Washington se humne import kiya tha, Manzoor something Qureshi, World Bank wala. The whole government told him, because it was very publicized, it was in the newspapers, but they didn't give him back. They didn't give him back. This is a very, very strict principle, very strict. So there are a couple of others, I haven't mentioned them, but not all Pathans or Pashtuns honor these. But these are the indications that if, for example, a non-Pashtun honors them, so there is a phrase used in Pashtuns, he's a very Pathan. So for example, if any person from any part in the world follows these principles and a Pashtun notices it, he will refer to him as he's a good Pashtun. So meaning, if Pashtuns come across a culture like the Rajputs in India, which reflect many of these values, they will have an immediate bonding with him. So because of their following of these principles.
Often there were the generals that they would join as mercenaries, they joined their army.
Oh yeah, all the core mercenaries in many Indian armies are Pashtuns. Even in and vice versa. Like you look at the head of the army of Sher Shah Suri, he was a Hindu general, Himu, who confronted Babur. Himu. So this is why the Pashtun empires are direct in contrast to Mughal empire. Mughals are very much targeted by, the RSS and the BJP, as anti-Hindu, etc. But with the non-disputed, like the Lodi dynasty, who are everybody, they have a very good interaction with Hindus. And this was something that was picked up by Akbar. Like all the Nauratan, Man Singh, all these famous names, they were generals and administrators in Sher Shah Suri's government. So when Akbar came, he took them all in. And he adopted Sher Shah Suri's methodology. Because Sher Shah Suri, for all he was concerned, was native to India. He was in Bengal. He did not see himself as an invader from the north. So his father and grandfather were administrators and generals during the Lodi era. So ये फर्क है थोड़ा सा. ये Indians इस distinction को बहुत करते हैं. Because in Pakistan we don't read anything other than Subcontinent other than Mughal era. ना Mughal के बाद, ना Mughal से पहले. We have associated ourselves with Mughals very closely. So I'll come to the language. So I've pasted. I pasted it because I wanted you to read it. I didn't want to explain it, all of it, but I want everybody to have a copy of the presentation if they want to read this. So as I said, just like the ethnicity, the language comes from the same era, place. Now these are examples of North Ossetia in the Caucasus, Soviet Socialist in Tajikistan. Now there's a very interesting fact. For example, if you have ever heard the word Barki, have you heard the word Barki? So the word Barki, Imran Khan's mother's side. Then there are people like Jamshed Barki, even Barki Road in Lahore, Shahid Javed Barki. Shahid Javed Barki is the economist. Jamshed Barki. Then his other uncle, who's also a cricketer, I forgot his name, Majid Khan. Now, I knew Imran Khan's uncle. He used to come where I played tennis. He used to come there. And in a conversation with him, I asked him, although I knew a little bit from before, he told me in more detail. Barki is a village outside Jalandhar. Now, these people in India, in our country, we always associate the word of the village with our family name. Sometimes it becomes a valley, like Kasur, Kasuri. So in the 17th century, there was a famine in the Waziristan region. Many tribes migrated. One of the tribe in the center of Waziristan, completely isolated, and they even have their own language, which is not Pashto. They speak Pashto and their own language. Their history can be traced back to the 15th century. So they migrated to Jalandhar and settled in Barki. Jalandhari Pathan. No, in Jalandhar there are many Pathans. This is one of them because they're a cluster of villages, large clusters. So now we call them in Pashto, we call them Urmar. Urmar is a little difficult to pronounce, but that is their tribal name. And if you meet them, we don't understand a single word they are saying. लेकिन बाद में इसका तहकीक हुआ, it turned out to be a dialect of Turkish. So completely isolated, और उसके अंदर एक सैयदों का एक community है, उसकी that sort of like is predominant there. And वो भी उनका जो मदरसा है is like 600-700 years old. Somehow they escaped persecution, and उसके एक और principle है जो मैंने इसमें mention नहीं किया, it's called Hamsaya. Hamsaya is a community that comes and lives with you under your protection. So they came as Hamsaya. So unka origin comes from the Caucasus region. So I met his Imran Khan's uncle. He's like in his 80s, and he knew all this history of the migration, but he didn't know the prior history. So I told him the prior history. और वो उसकी language से पता चला है. So they have a very unique language. So if a Turk comes from Caucasus or like Chechnya or from Turkey, he understands what he is saying. although that person may not have exited his village for his whole life. ये बड़ा interesting था ये मुख्तलिफ तो Eastern Iranian, Western Iranian ये उसकी major subgroups है. So the Indo-Iranian branch of the Indo-European family of languages. I'll come later to the grammar. So all these languages of different dialects are spoken. Main is Persian or is Iranian, and this indicates in this text. So Pashto is part of the overall, linguistic, heritage of this region. But there are certain unique words to Pashto which don't exist in Farsi, which don't exist in Sanskrit, which make it, and because of the geographical isolation, they have maintained those words. And those words, have been used by, different people who've, quoted the ethnic origins of Afghans or Pashtuns as, indicating that, they are related to, Bani Israel. They're very unique words. There's a very interesting clip on that on YouTube. I'll show it to you if you have enough time.
Previous slide you had, this one. The Osset, is that a language or?
This is a region. This is a region.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is a region. This is correlates with slightly north of Dagestan and Chechnya. Yeah, North and South Ossetia. This is not of the ethnic connection, but the linguistic connection. Yeah. So the history of the language, again, lots of borrowed words. So you can come across many familiar words, but mostly Persian. The more isolated a region you go to, the more you will find the influence of Persian and the type of Persian that's not spoken in Iran these days. Even those words are not used by Iranians anymore. You will find other words from Arabic and Persian. Arabic is also very strong, and some words from Greek, because this was under heavy Greek influence for some time. So I won't go too much into the origin of the languages, but obviously because it was a gateway, it's part of the region. Afghanistan or Pashtun was not in isolation. They were an integral part of the empires and of the region, because it was part of the defensive line just as it is today. So if the Mughals needed to defend themselves against the Persians, they had to maintain, a certain fortresses and, bases in the frontier region. So a very heavy influence of different languages. So linguistic studies show the oldest texts date back to this era, but this is a little bit controversial. Some people believe that, this is fabricated. There is one famous book that has been unearthed, but it is not substantiated. The most substantiated book is from the 15th century. This individual called Aziz Ansari was a leader of that era from the Waziristan region, from the same tribe I mentioned to you, the Barki, but within the Barki from the Sayyid and Pir lineage. So he was a spiritual figure. Many of the uprisings against different empires, this was during the Mughal Empire, during the time of Akbar, were led by spiritual figures. Like, for example, in the British era, you will heard the word Fakir of AP. Fakir is like he was a Darwish. So all the Darwish and Sufia took up the sword and, defended.
As in North Africa also?
Yes, exactly the same. Very little difference. So the poetic traditions of these people, these are during a time of Mughals, post-Mughals. The poetry as it is started from this era, that many of the texts that we have are from this era. This is the oldest book in Pashto, is from the 16th
What is
century.
Khushal Khan?
Yeah, Khushal Khan Khattak. Khushal, sorry? His era is the time Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb. Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb. So that's like late 17th century and the 17th century as a whole. He lived to a very old age, almost in his 80s. So he was the head of the Khattak tribe, and he led a movement against the Mughals. And sometimes he led against them, sometimes he allied with them, but ultimately he was against them. Yes, yeah, and he is the national poet of Afghanistan too. And this poetry I've shown you here, life is no life when honor is left. This is a motto that's displayed outside PMA Kakul. So this is not in Pashto, it's in English. But Khushal Khan Khattak was, his uniqueness was that, first of all, he was a warrior, but he wrote profusely. He's written many, many books, poetry, and the corpus of Pashto literature, poetry, and of literature is developed by these two people, Khushal Khan Khattak and Rahman Baba. So Rahman Baba was a Sufi poet. Khushal Khan Khattak had a heavy influence of Sufism as well, because his murshid and his people with whom he shared most of his time with were Sufis. So this is man's a man when honor's kept, life's no life when honor's left. Nation's honor, nation's fame, on life they have a prior claim. This is taken as a nationalistic slogan. It's interesting because Khushal Khan Khattak is also used by Afghans as their, patriotic figure, and it's also used in Pakistan as the patriotic figure. But it's a big honor to have, a couplet from Khushal Khan as a, in Kakul. So he has a very unique history, very interesting history, but that would be, take the lecture somewhere else. So this is the alphabet. The alphabet is more or less like what you're familiar with in Persian and Arabic and Urdu. Some words are different, and there's just a 2-minute clip. If you want, I can show you the pronunciation, and they'll show you some words as well. Like so. It's a little boring, but I thought you could see it all. So you can see the Qaf here. This is Gaf. Instead of another line here, we just write a small circle there. So it becomes, instead of Qaf, it becomes Gaf. So instead of Ankur, it becomes Angur. Bay is Bay. That's no explanation for that. So this is also a word. Pay is pay, but palm means to pay attention. So for example, if I say in Persian, palm kardan. Kardan means, to do. I can say in Pashto, palm kawa. Kawa means kardan, like in. So many of the words are similar to Persian as well. So here's another word. It will come later, but I'm showing it here. Jis tarah hum Punjabi mein bhi kehte hain tarkaan. So tarkaan is also used in Pashto as well. So the noon, it gives that sound, at the end of tarkaan, arn, So it's used in Pashto as well. So here, instead of using a toy here, they use a circle here. You can see that. Say. Jim. You can hear the word Janan is very common in Pashto songs. Janan. Che. This is Re. Chada. Knife. Hey. So here's here comes the difficult part. So this is Tse, it's not Se. Tse, like T-S. Tse. Tse, not. So this is not Tse, this is Ze. A little bit different. Dal. Again, dal. Ore.
Indic sounds.
Yeah, yes, all of them. This is Re. This is a little different. Re. But no, thoda sa wo heavier, more force. Re. Re is like in Ghara. So it's a little different from Ren. Shpa means night. This is difficult. This even I sometimes have a problem. Khin. Yeah. Khin, like in, we use the word like your wife's sister is called Khina. So this is Khin. So this is branch. Ghakh. Actually, this is, if you just change this pronunciation a little bit, it becomes tut. It's difficult to pronounce.
Swar, swar, dwar, dwar.
It's almost finished.
Twe, twe, zwe, zwe.
So it's not zoe, it's zwe. Yeah.
Ain,
Ain.
ain, rain, rain, fe, fe, qaf, 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 gaf, gaf, lam, lam, mim.
You look at the word mar. Mar is Persian. Mar for snake is Persian.
Mim, nun, nun.
So, na joda. Na meanings like you say namud in Persian. You write noon and then the word, it means not this. So joda means like healthiness. Na joda, not healthy.
Nun, 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 wow, wow.
Oh, that's sorry, I missed that.
Hey, hey, Hamza, Hamza, ye, ye.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 5 types of ye. This is because whenever you speak Pashto, unlike Urdu, objects and objects don't have genders. Like in Urdu, the desk or the door or the car or the fruit has, a gender, which makes it very difficult for Pashto-speaking people to understand.
So Pashto is ungendered?
No, gender is only associated with an individual or an animal, to living things. So when you refer to a woman, you change the gender. You refer to man, gender. But if you refer to an object, most of it is male. But and it's like in Persian is the same.
So I think it's like that in Arabic as well.
I'm not sure, but I'm not sure about Arabic.
Gender, all objects.
Like a car is female.
Yeah. So objects as such don't have gender. So that's why when Pashto people are learning Urdu, they will always mix up their cars and keys because they don't know the difference. So this is plural. Sade, sadi. Sade, that's A, and this is E. Wade, feminine singular. Wade means like small female child. This is feminine plural. Actually, I made a mistake. Actually, sometimes it is done with objects as well. But there are so few that you can pick it up very quickly. So that it is, that gives you some idea. The uniqueness of this is that if you come across any language like Punjabi, Saraiki, and in India any language, the north region you will be generally familiar with, you will be able to adapt. When you go south of Delhi towards Gujarat and towards Maharashtra, then suddenly the language is changed, then you have to start from the beginning. You can't expect it will have similarities with your language and you'll be able to pick it up easily.
But like even with Punjabi or Sindhi,
Yeah.
is it?
No, that's what I was saying. This language is very different. That because you speak any of the languages in North India, it doesn't mean that you will pick up Pashto easily. It's difficult. If you're Persian speaking, then it's relatively easy. But this is very much under the Persian umbrella. Like I explained in the previous slides. There's one written by a Britisher called the Pathans. Pathans, yes. Olaf Carroll, yeah, he's a former governor of KPK. And there are other ones. There's The Way of Pathans by James Spain. But these are in English. There are some in Urdu as well. But you can find them in usually every bookshop. They're available.
I have a question. What about the Bacha Khan movement?
Yeah. Well, Bacha Khan movement is started during the beginning of the 20th century, because in KPK at that time there was the frontier crimes regulation was politically very suppressed, and the British at that time deliberately didn't allow anyone to schooling. So he was a part of that elite, that entered into the army, etc., bureaucracy, Ghani Khan, and he got a commission in the army, but he didn't go. And then suddenly he had, he changed and he started an educational movement, social welfare education called Khuday Khidmatgar. That then morphed into a political movement because he wanted to give education to people who were deprived of education. So he became a Kamit, Darwesh Malang, and left everything and just established these schools. He was a teacher, an educationist. So wo British era tha, when it became political, he asked the Muslim League. Muslim League had not yet reached that type of party, wasn't that type of party yet. Then he allied himself with the Congress. He needed the protection of Congress. This was at a time when Quaid-e-Azam was also a part of Congress. Being in 1915, 16, 17, 18. So then, it became of the broad, Indian national freedom movement. They had issues vis-a-vis whenever Pakistan was created, but remember that Pakistan didn't come into the lexicon, the freedom movement until 1940. So he was fighting for freedom against the British. तो वो इस वजह से पाकिस्तान में उसका थोड़ा सा उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में उसको देखा जाता है. हाँ. Yeah, so he spent more years in jail than Nelson Mandela. He spent 32 years in jail. Not in one continuous way, but in breaks. 32 years in jail. And he spent more time in jail after 1947 than prior to 1947. So वो movement में वो ये controversies है, part of history.
I was reading yesterday about the massacre.
Babra massacre, yeah, Babra massacre. Yeah, that was when the government there, like in 1946 elections took place. There was a Congress government led by Afar Khan's party. His son, or I think his brother, was chief minister. Then that was like removed, using that Governor General's power like they used to do. Quaid-e-Azam did it himself. And in KPK, the provincial assembly was not allowed to vote for either India or Pakistan. That's the only case in the whole of India that was like that. Otherwise, all the provincial assemblies voted. So, uske protest mein, Joanna, about 400 or 500 people were killed. So that's called the Babra massacre. Yeah, Babra massacre. Like in India, mein uska, I was because I went to India in the beginning. When you enter Delhi, so right in the main entrance of Delhi, so there is a statue, very famous landmark of Delhi. There are 11 people, stalwarts of the freedom movement. At the head is Mahatma Gandhi. Right behind him is Afar Khan, which is astonishing because Nehru and Patel are at the back. So this is a monument. So in India, they have a huge respect for him. लेकिन वो चूँकि वो बाद में वो politics में enter हो गया पाकिस्तान के बाद, they were seen as, traitors, etc., etc. तो वो उसको sideline किया हुआ history books में.
जी ऑनलाइन अगर कोई सवाल हो, क्योंकि नाउ वी हैव टू एंड, तो जरूर आप अभी कोई है.
जी I was wanting to ask if like I myself I'm Pakistan actually.
No.
So I was wanting to ask how I can find out more about my past.
Well, I'll give my email. I'll give my email. But from what I have know about the Kakizais in Lahore, is that they're from a tribe in a tribal agency called Bajaur. Bajaur, we call it Bajaur as well. And people there have been famous over centuries for horse trading. So in the Mughal era, Sikh era, actually the Sikhs asked them to come and establish their places here in Lahore. Ek jagah hai, I forgot wo mashhoor haveli hai, Mubarak Haveli inside Lahore. Something Haveli. वो उसका था वो जो फकीर something family है, फकीर के नाम का कोई family है लाहौर में मेन. हाँ, उसके साथ एक बहुत बड़े stables थे, तो ये काकेज़ाइयों की थी. It was owned by the Kakizais, kept stable their horses. So they were horse traders coming from Bajaur. Then they've settled in Lahore and become very prominent. I think आपका एक chief justice भी काकेज़ाई था, Lahore High Court का.
There's a story like in the family that it came from Ghaznavi there on the migrate here.
Yeah, possibly because during that era, जो Ghaznavid आया था, Ghaznavi came through Bajaur agency. So maybe that origin might be trace it even back further from. और ये है कि बहुत सारे जो KPK में पठान से, they have come from central Afghanistan, which is Ghazni is a part of central Afghanistan. So it's very possible. I think you might be right.
Yeah, that's the family story that.
It's very possible, yeah. Yeah, Kakizai are mentioned in, if you buy the book, The Pathans, उसमें Kakizai mention किए हैं वो जीनियोलॉजी में।
Thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome.
Any other questions? तो अभी हम 10 मिनट की ब्रेक ले सकते हैं सर, तो 12:15 इंशाल्लाह शुरू करेंगे। आप लोग 40 की तरह